Hey, this is Father Gary Cato with Project SOS, and I'm very proud to sponsor this episode of Salute. We hope you enjoy it.
Hello and welcome to Central Florida Salute YouTube. Today I have a National Guard First Sergeant and longtime Florida resident and grew up in Florida, Mr. Cary Baker, who is also the Lake County Property Appraiser. But we're here to talk about Cary Baker. And you know what, Cary?
What, Bob?
There's a guy who wants to come over and say hello to you. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Where is that guy? Oh, here he comes.
Oh, my goodness. Colonel Basinger, my very first company commander when I joined back in 1981.
Yeah, do you recognize him?
Yes, of course. He put me on my path to success in the Florida National Guard.
Have a seat,
I owe
Colonel.
you my career, sir. Thank you.
He told me a little story about you.
No. I didn't think those were allowed.
Would you like to repeat the story you told me? He's, by the way, one of my partners. We partnered together on the Q, 1410, the Q, and we came right from the radio station here. Once I told him you were here, he said he had to come over.
Okay.
So tell a little story about him.
Well, he reminded me of the story. I swore Cary into the National Guard at the Eustis Armory, and then probably annual training right after that. He was probably an E1 or E2. Doing a gate guard duty, and I drive up in my Jeep with my driver, and he challenges me. And so I just told him if he recognized his company commander, he didn't have to challenge him.
So I learned very quickly.
Yeah.
Never made that mistake again.
One of the great things about the Guard is, I've served with Cary for all these years. I served with his brother, and meet him around town and everything else. So it's just a great opportunity, and he's done a good job.
Thank you, sir.
Deployed and
Thank you.
all that.
Yeah, Cary, he told me that story. I said I had to have him come over and talk.
No, that's awesome.
But talking about the Guard, when did you go? Were you right after high school, or how did this all come about?
I was in high school. So Tiberias High School, I was a senior. Now, my family, there was a lot of Guard history in my family. But even before that, so I had one of my great-great-grandfathers served in the American Revolutionary War, Edward Baker. And then, of course, I had an uncle that was killed in France during World War I. My daddy served in World War II, was injured by a German mortar round. I had an uncle that was a Navy test pilot that was killed landing on the Forrestal.
Oh, yeah. I remember
and,
Forrestal.
Had another uncle that served in the Army and the Guard. And so my three older brothers all served in the Florida National Guard. And the colonel had served with one Stewart. He put in 24 years in the Guards. With Bravo Company. So I had all this family history. I had a customer, Harold Rogers, who was one of your platoon sergeants. And Harold, he would remind me that I was joining the Guards every time he'd come in the shop, because that's where I worked at the gun shop, family business, A.W. Peterson Gun Shop. And so as soon as I turned 18, pretty much signed the paperwork a month later, then Captain Basinger was signing me in for a 32-year career.
Was he a model soldier? Or?
Oh, certainly.
Oh, certainly.
He's the tax assessor, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So he's
he's property
appraiser.
Property
Same thing. He
appraiser.
Controls how much money I pay every year. So.
Oh,
Everybody always says nice things about me anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And so because of sort of the family history, I wanted to serve. So I was still senior high school, and I joined up that summer. I went to Fort Benning, Georgia for my basic training and AIT, Advanced Infantry Training. I became a tow gunner. I was a top tow gunner in basic training.
There's some people out there.
Still have that award, by the way.
There's some
Bob.
people who don't know what a tow gunner is.
TOW, so that's an anti-tank missile. And so I was a top shot in basic training. Still have a little plaque, keep on the wall, very proud of it, Private Baker. I was also on the state, Jim Livingston, Sergeant First Class Jim Livingston, ran one of our pistol teams, and I was a private, and we won the state match on that. At the Armory, they still have our names written on a little plaque.
Yeah.
Private PV1 Baker.
So you the Armory in Eustis, right?
Armory in Eustis. So I served off and on there for 24 years. I went from Private Baker to First Sergeant in the same unit. The unit changed over the years. It started out as Combat Support Company and then reorganized in a Delta Company, which was Combat Support, had mortars, scouts, and anti-armor, the TOW anti-armor system. Then they reorganized and we became nothing but anti-armor. And now it's even different since I've left. I did spend a year in Alpha Company here in Leesburg.
You know, my very first show that I did with Lakefront TV was at the Armory in Leesburg.
Yep. I was the first sergeant of Alpha Company when we went to Iraq for the deployment in 2003 and 4. And then I ended up my career at the Regional Training Institute, Florida's Army National Guard Military Academy. I spent my last 7 years there.
I didn't know that.
Yep. It was
But you
good.
were also serving in Tallahassee when you when you were deployed.
Well, and of course, as you know, sir, as a National Guard citizen soldier, you know, we have full-time civilian careers, so I was able to work at the family gun shop my entire Guard career and run for elected office. So I served in the Florida House and the Florida Senate, and I was still in the Guards when I was elected as County Property Appraiser. So that's sort of the neat thing about the National Guard service is that you can still have a great civilian career. Of course, I got married, had kids, 3 children, and I was able to balance it all to make it work. It was a challenge at times, but I never, even though I was in politics, I never missed a drill, never missed a single annual training.
You better, because you would have to answer to this guy.
No, that's right. Well, I was military service was a priority for me, even when I was.
Well, you had a long history of family history there.
Sure.
You know, and I know you're very big into history. I've heard you speak at a couple occasions, sometimes with the Korean veterans. We used to have do shows down there at the Armory, and your knowledge of the military history is great. But we're not doing military history today. We're doing Cary Baker history today.
Baker history.
So you
That's not as exciting or fun, but it's okay.
that's okay.
Yeah.
So you joined the Guard, you went to basic, and then you came back home.
Came back home. I was able to, the Florida National Guard offered a little college benefit. So they paid for my classes at Lake Sumter Community College at the time, now State College. And they still offer those college benefits for anybody that's interested in joining the Florida Guard, which I recommend it to young people all the time. And so we, I think my first annual trainings are with you. That would have been Camp Shelby, Mississippi.
Oh, that was a fun time.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Are we going to talk about that or no?
Well,
No, I just had 2 weeks in the woods and annual training, and that was the first year I think we had all the tow vehicles. We had so many vehicles, and you're supposed to disperse them when you're in the field. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many vehicles we had, 30, 40 vehicles.
and we had a bunch because we drove them. And I remember our long caravan, which was in an old Jeep. So we had the old Army Jeeps. And driving to Mississippi, now that's a long drive in an Army Jeep, going
An old Army Jeep.
45 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So,
That's right. The first tows were on Jeeps. Then they moved to Humvees. That's right. Yeah.
and then you may have gone to battalion when we first went to Panama, maybe 83 or 84.
Yeah.
We went several times.
First time we went, I was a second lieutenant, and that was before.
That was before me.
That was before Cary Baker even got into the Guard.
So my brother Roy and Stuart were both on that deployment.
Right.
So
So your brothers were also in the Guard.
two of them prior to me, and then one of them consecutively. He served at Bravo Company when I was at Combat Support Company and Delta Company. So he was a food NCO in Bravo Company.
Good, good.
Had a great career. And then so that was pretty awesome as a young man going down to the Panama Canal Zone. And that quite an experience. Of course, we had during these times, had various hurricane duties. You know, that's probably our number one state of Florida responsibility is natural disasters, which in Florida typically means a hurricane. Occasional fire.
Yeah, the Guard traditionally is under the role of the state, right?
We have dual responsibilities.
Yeah.
So if we're
Because
not,
I did a show with this gentleman.
I'm going to see how much you remember. Go ahead. Talk.
No, this is my show, not yours. He does this to me on the radio too, but no. One thing too we talked about was that you could have to be in the Guard and you'd have to go from this post to that place. So you know the Army, this Army or that Army. You really don't have, did you have to go anywhere else besides that one
Yeah,
armory?
he's got a lot to tell you about deployments.
Well, I'm going to listen.
Well,
Okay.
now, what was sort of nice as an enlisted National Guard member, you don't have to move that much as far as moving from unit to unit. Mm-hmm. Like even an officer, though, they are forced. They have their several years as a lieutenant, several years as company commander.
Yeah, he was
and
telling
after-
me that. He had to move around quite a bit.
that's what every officer has to. And a guard and an enlisted soldier doesn't have that as much, but it is the same. And then,
So you were at Eustis all the time.
well, Eustis,
And
Leesburg, and Camp Landing. So
Where's Camp Landing?
That's due west of St. Augustine,
Oh, okay.
Stark.
Stark.
Okay.
It's our largest Florida National Guard training camp, and it was the single largest basic training camp in World War II, Camp Landing. Not to bring up history, heaven forbid.
Oh,
But so we had a lot of hurricane duties over the years, including Hurricane Andrew. That was probably one of the Guard's largest natural disaster deployments. And we were always very proud of that service as a Florida Guardsman. You're proud that you can take care of folks in time of disaster.
absolutely.
And normally the civilians are very receptive to the Guard's presence. We provide a calming effect. People feel safe when the Guard arrives. And of course, we bring water and food when necessary. So, and the neat thing is about deployments also is Florida Guard. So I think I deployed 3 times down to Panama, including once we did a modified jungle operations training center event. So that was outstanding training. And so I don't know if you know about this, but in 05 and 06, both those summers, I deployed with the Florida Guard to Kiev, Ukraine, for a NATO's operation, Partnership with Peace operation. So it was all former Soviet Union militaries, and we'd bring them all in. It was a pretty easy deployment. We trained inside their national academy in Kiev, simulated warfare, and it was just designed. I was there mostly as a support role, designed for the various militaries to work together in low-level conflict training, moving up, and we did that 2 summers in a row. But that's pretty exciting. And currently, I don't know if they're back yet. We have Florida Guard members that are in Albania. Maybe
They'll be back in first week of June.
yeah, they're in Albania training right now. We deploy. Of course, the Florida Guard deploys Iraq, Afghanistan. We've been to Africa several times. So we are a very active National Guard here in Florida. Other states as well too, but we're a big state, so we have a lot of Guard members. And of course, we have the Army Guard. That's about 10,000 of us, and there's a couple thousand Air Guard.
Air Force,
Air
actually,
Force.
yeah.
So,
Now he's interested, Air Force, Air Guard.
well, I didn't want him to make them feel, he
But now
was-
you were deployed, which time for the
So for
combat?
yes, sir. So that would have been February of 03. We deployed to the Middle East prior to the war breaking out in Iraq, and we were actually in Bahrain. The little Seventh Fleet, Navy Fleet, is based out of Bahrain. And our job, they had 2 of those Patriot missile batteries, the missiles that would shoot down the Scud missiles. So they had 2 of the batteries, and so my job was to provide infantry defense to those 2 sites. And so we were there until the war kicked off, and then we rolled into Iraq first part of May, and we were in Iraq a little north of Baghdad most of the time. Balad was a town. It was an old military base. They called it we called it LSA Anaconda. When we arrived, Alpha Company Leesburg, when we arrived there may have been 1,500 troops. By the time we left, there was 22,000.
Wow.
So from May 03 to February 04, under constant mortar attack. Luckily, they weren't very good shots. It was mostly like drive-by mortar shooting. And it was our job to try to chase them down and catch them, which we didn't do. We kept them moving, so they weren't very accurate. part of that. We never really caught them, but we kept them pushed back so they could never
Kept them on the run.
Kept them on the run, and so the loss, whether it was injuries or death, was very minimal. But we did have a mortar round. They did get lucky one afternoon, and they landed a mortar round right in our company area. We were actually doing a little barbecuing. Had a bus there, blew all the windows out of the bus. We ended up, 11 soldiers were injured, 11 Purple Hearts. A couple seriously. No one died, though.
Thank God.
So, yep, thank God. So, and sort of what was unique for me at that time when we deployed, I was a member of the Florida House of Representatives. So I was an elected officer, and what was nice, when I deployed, they tied a yellow ribbon around my desk or around my chair, said nice things about me when I was gone.
Well, yeah.
Matter of fact, I had some bills filed. All my bills passed. That was a miracle, because nobody wanted to vote against me because they were feeling patriotic, maybe feeling sorry for me. So, and I arrived back in time. By the time I arrived back, I just in time to come home and head back to Tallahassee for our legislative session. I was able to call, we had satellite phones. I was able to lead the House of Representatives in the Pledge of Allegiance several times.
Yeah,
From Iraq.
you know, I talked about this on some other shows I did. You know, back when I was in, during the Vietnam time, we didn't have those cell phones, and then you go way back into the history, like with World War I, World War II. They don't even know where they are, if they're ever coming home. It ain't over till it's over there and all that. And nowadays, the young military people are over there, and they've got so much time they can talk to their family and everything.
Right.
It's super.
Well, sometimes it's super, sometimes it's not. Because if they're talking with their family every day or almost every day, then they hear about when the car breaks down, they hear about when the kids are sick, they hear about that mom or dad's health is not doing well. So there's actually a very large distraction that occurs with all that communication.
Yeah.
But we dealt with it,
Yeah, I did, thanks to the Armed Forces Network, I talked to my mother when I was overseas. They had to go through the radio different, from here to Germany to there, whatever, and I got to talk to my mother when my grandmother passed.
Right.
So that was, I thought that was amazing, and now I did a show with a young fellow who said, yeah, he'd be sitting on a mountaintop talking to his wife. I thought, it's a different world.
That was a different world.
Different world.
Speaking of different worlds, when I got in '81, the Florida Guard had probably suffered from many years of neglect in funding. Our equipment was poor, very little training dollars.
Yeah, I was in there at the time where we really not well trained, not well equipped. Things started moving, really going, and then to seeing my son-in-law deployed.
Yeah, he's deployed now, right?
Yeah, he's in Armenia right now that Cary was talking about. Defender Europe, I think,
Yes.
21. It's an exercise, and they're primarily training, I believe, the Armenian army.
Yeah, well, they weren't really used a lot in the past, but nowadays they are used a lot more.
Well, of course, even the active duty suffered during the 70s.
You did what, 31 years?
31 years, 9 months, 8 days.
And 27 minutes?
27 minutes, yes.
Yeah.
I finally got out just because I got old. It's like there needed to be a young soldier. No, military's a young man's game.
Oh, that's
Do we want old
young men and women's game.
young men and women? And we don't want a bunch of old guys fighting our wars for us. We want young people. It's like a firefighter.
We just did a show with it's airing this as we sit here this particular week with a Lieutenant Colonel Stephanie Gridwald, I forget, and she just came back from Afghanistan a few years ago, and I'm sitting there next to her. I'm thinking, wow, you look like you just got out of high school, And I'm starting to realize I got out of the service 50 years ago.
Well, I was just going to change the subject.
Yeah,
but,
good man.
Cary's, he's one of those people that I talk about on the radio when I talk about the spouses. He left a spouse, and she dealt with all this stuff while he was gone. Probably had 1 or 2 children during that time.
We, at that point, 4 months before my deployment, my first child, Leighton, was born.
Which is the way it usually works.
Yes. So when I left, when I deployed to Iraq, he was just an infant. And by the time I returned, he was walking, not really talking, but he's a year and a half old. So he went from just a baby to a toddler, and who didn't recognize his daddy, of course. And of course, that's still going on. I mean, we utilize the Florida Guard a lot, probably too much, in my opinion. And so it is causing difficulties with families and careers. And so I would like to see it where we didn't deploy quite as much as we are currently, because it's tough on troops.
It's tough on
active duty.
I was going to say that, you know.
That's right, it is. I mean, when you're going all the time, it's hard to have a healthy marriage. So there's some challenges there.
And Cary is the first sergeant. He is the guy that all the enlisted soldiers go to for anything and everything. So I'm sure you heard about the family issues and
Every day.
and everything else. And I don't know how, I think your wife was involved the first deployment, and Sue and I would attend some of the meetings.
Yes,
so
sir.
you might talk about her part in all this as a
So,
married wife.
right, for a lot of us, when we deployed in 03, that was my first deployment, and that was most of us was our first deployment. So what was wonderful was that we had some wives step up as a family support group, and so they kept the spouses informed. They tried to provide services where they could, be helpful, all those things I mentioned before that goes on during life, cars breaking down, air conditioners at the house quit working, so they tried to be a support group for each other.
Yeah.
And it worked. It was very important. I mean,
It's still working today, from
Yes,
what I
still
understand.
working. Yes, sir.
I remember when, like I said, I did my first show in 2010, and when that was Leesburg was going, and they said there was going to be nobody there, television or anything, So I was with Lakefront TV. I just walked over to say goodbye, and there's Channel 3 and Channel 11 or whatever, So then I wound up doing a very first show with the National Guard, and we tried to do some stuff with the AMVETs to help out, and they keep very quiet. They don't want the families. They don't want the word getting out that their husband or wife is deployed. They don't want to make it public knowledge, because there's you never know who's going to come after you, kind of wackos.
and I can tell you that talking about groups supporting us, like AMVETS, American Legion, VFW, and other groups, when we were in Iraq, part of my responsibility was ensuring the mail got delivered. And it took a while for the mail to catch up with us. Mm-hmm. But when it did, every day was just 20, 30 boxes of care packages.
Yeah, you didn't steal the cookies, did you?
No, I didn't steal the cookies. But we ended up having probably more than we needed. But we were able to share with other units if they were short. But what was heartening was the support back home. So we just knew that people were thinking of us, so they were praying for us, they cared for us, they'd send packages, they'd always include notes, cards, letters, and so that was really, that was sort of special, that I would get these generic letters and cards, and I would divvy them out to the soldiers, and of course they were getting cards and letters from their family as well. But the American people were just extraordinarily supportive of the military in Iraq and Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And that was very helpful. It's very important for a service member to know the folks back home support them. And it
Certainly.
worked. I mean, it worked.
Yeah, certainly is. So when did you get out?
So January 31st, 2013.
2013. Okay. So you've been out 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I miss it still. My uniforms are still in the closet, Colonel. They're still in the closet. My boots are there.
Can you still
Well,
wear them?
Oh, of course, I can still. This is sort of interesting. When I went into Iraq, I was the first elected official to serve in uniform in Iraq.
I think
we have-
every elected official ought to serve in uniform.
Well,
That's my
while
opinion.
still,
But we ain't going to do politics. No
no,
politics.
this isn't politics. But what's interesting is that there are currently in the Florida House, there are members of the Florida Guard serving in the Florida House. There are members of the Florida Guard serving in the U.S. Congress.
Yeah.
So Congressman Waltz is a colonel in our special
Look at the
forces.
numbers from the 50s to now.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
It's nothing now.
Nothing now, yeah.
compared.
But anyway, you had a very successful career. One of your fondest memories would be what?
Well, just serving with soldiers.
Just camaraderie?
Putting on the uniform, training, those are all just tremendously important memories for me. And like I said, I miss it. I still miss
Yeah,
it.
I know you do some public speaking,
I do.
and you do a lot of military history, which I'm very into military history too, and I think that's great. Cary, before we go, your experiences in the military, did they transcend into civilian life, and what would you say to young people about being like into military?
Oh, yeah. So the qualities that a professional soldier or service member must have to be successful translates entirely into the civilian world. As a matter of fact, it's sorely missing. Otherwise, really, there's no one but the military that instills discipline better. Discipline that you can immediately translate into your personal life and your professional civilian life. Camaraderie and the understanding of it takes a team. Everyone doing their part together, focused on a goal or a mission. And there's nothing better than the military for you to understand that. There's nothing better than going into a combat zone, understanding that every day is exam day, but it's not pass or fail, it's live or die. And those type of values that are just drilled into you translate directly, and as well as leadership. To understand that even there comes a point that even the lowest private has to know that there's a point they might have to take charge. Mm-hmm. And that everyone needs to understand that they need to be clear in their directions. They need to have qualities of a leader that people would emulate. And in the military, people don't think about this, but we have what we call caring leadership. You need to care for those that work for you. You need to understand their concerns. As a leader, the colonel would always eat last. His soldiers would eat before he ate. This is how we did it in the Army. So that's caring leadership that applies as a civilian becomes a manager or an owner of a business. So just all those qualities of teamwork, discipline, leadership, caring leadership,
And camaraderie.
camaraderie.
And you take that over, like I've been out for quite a few years, but a vet can talk to a vet, and we have a bond. There's always that bond. And with that, we're going to leave this show before you do something else again. So, gentlemen, I thank you for coming on, Colonel. I thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you.
First Sergeant, and this is the way we say goodbye, So, to all our veterans out there, our active military and their families, we salute you for all you do. Till next time.
Since 2009, Project SOS has assisted our veterans both overseas and here at home to overcome medical issues, homelessness, and disabilities. Initially, our efforts resulted in over 22 clinics opened in Iraq and Afghanistan. Recently, as troops have been withdrawn, we have concentrated on issues here at home. During this past year, we have been able to distribute 42 motorized wheelchairs and numerous mobility devices to our local veterans who have served in World War II and up to and including Afghanistan. We continue to offer solutions to our local homeless veterans in the Ocala National Forest and other Central Florida locations. Project SOS Support Our Soldiers needs your assistance to continue helping a growing homeless veterans population. Over-the-counter medications and personal hygiene supplies are acutely needed. Your financial aid will greatly increase the support they so desperately need.